For years, Texas lawmakers have debated whether parents should be able to use taxpayer dollars for private school tuition. This week, on Inside the Investigation, we explain how under the state's latest plans, private schools will still be out of reach for some of the state's poorest students. Welcome to Inside the Investigation. This week, Josh Hinkle, the Director of Investigation and Innovation, is joining me. He's here to discuss education savings accounts. It's the talk of the town right now.
I feel like we've been talking about it for months. Yes.
Yes,
but this is a great angle, and you are the investigator who has dug into that this week. So thank you for having me, first of all. I want to start from the very beginning, since I'm hosting this thing this week. Because there's been an effort to create some sort of voucher system, as I said, for a long time in the state, right?
Right. I mean, it's for decades. The Texas House has pushed back on attempts to let tax dollars go to private schools. And last week, when Senate Bill 2 went for a floor vote, Democrats tried again. It was an 11-hour hearing, but ultimately, as we now know, the House, for the first time in decades, approved legislation that could create a school voucher-like program in the state.
Yeah, it was very contentious, but explain to us exactly what the plan that they finally landed on would actually do.
Right, because there's been a lot of versions. The plan that the Senate and the House has now passed, Senate Bill 2, the chair of the Senate K through 16 Education Committee, and probably one of the most vocal lawmakers in Texas in support of school choice, it's authored by Senator Brendan Creighton. He filed that bill. And under his plan, participating students would get $10,000 annually to spend on tutors, uniforms, school supplies, and probably most controversially, private school tuition. Separate from that, if a student can show they have a disability, they can be eligible at a minimum for $11,500 annually and at max $30,000 each year.
Well, that is a big span, a big difference.
Right.
So how does a student actually show that they have a disability to be eligible for those funds?
That's where it's getting a little funky. If you are a student who has already been evaluated as needing special education services at a public school, you'll probably have, well, not probably, you will have what is called an individualized education plan or an IEP. And that shows what accommodations, services, and other help you need to learn. The bill lays out that you would present this to the comptroller's office, who under this bill would be running this program, or to one of the vendors that the comptroller's office will take on or hire. And they will determine with that plan how much you get up to that $30,000 amount. But if you're not coming from a public school, it will be more complicated. The bill lays out that students can go to the school district in their area and get an evaluation free of charge. And that's really always been the case. That's the case right now, that you could go to your public school district in your area and get an evaluation. But once the evaluation report is complete, the student would then need to be issued an IEP, that individualized education plan, by the public school. And this is where it's not necessarily going over well with advocates who say this puts public school districts, it puts a bigger burden on them. They already have a line of students who are waiting for initial evaluations and IEPs. So this would be more students coming to them that they would really never serve if they got this ESA that would need the same service.
And there are deadlines that are associated with these evaluations, right?
Yes, there are. There's a state law that stipulates school districts have 45 school days to do the evaluation once a student is referred and suspected of having a disability. And then once the evaluation report is done, federal law says you have to develop the student's IEP within 30 calendar days. So not school days, an even quicker turnaround to do that.
So you've also been focusing on what an education savings account program might look like if it ends up getting through this legislative session.
That's right. At the center of Governor Abbott's and Republican lawmakers' pitch for education savings account has been low-income families in the state. Governor Abbott has repeated this time and time again.
We wanted to make sure that parents of low income are going to have the same opportunity that the wealthy have.
And I think this time around, Democrats and those opposed to, again, any program that would divert taxpayer dollars to private schools knew Governor Abbott had the votes to pass this legislation this time around. And so it seemed they were focused on pressing Republican leaders on that pitch to low income families.
But the pretending that we can't somehow give people options at the dollar amount that we have, we truly can, and I think we can give them great options. So
well, I'm not sure I agree with that. As I said before, what you are doing and professing is to give these children a 10-foot rope and they're in a 12-foot hole. And so how do you expect them to get out of it?
A 10-foot rope in a 12-foot hole. So is that a good description of this program?
It was a powerful quote that people have been paying attention to. And I mean, first, the ESA doesn't guarantee admission to any private school. So let's start there. And in many cases, the ESA alone will not cover tuition at every school, not fully. So our team identified, for instance, 52 special education schools in the state, private special education schools that are accredited by one of the 19 agencies recognized by the Texas Private School Association. And we reviewed their tuition data. We did that because under this bill, the participating schools, it would be required that they be accredited. And the minimum amount that any student with a disability would receive, again, is $11,500. That wouldn't go very far. Private schools that serve students with disabilities are very expensive. It would fully cover, we found, just 3 of those schools that, again, are accredited by one of those 19 agencies and also serve students with disabilities. But keep in mind, it's not an either or choice between a student with a disability is getting that $11,500 or $30,000. Families could land anywhere on that sliding scale depending on how the state is looking at their IEP and what services they might need. But we wanted to know, even at the maximum, how many are covered. We found that the majority of those schools that serve students with disabilities that are accredited, neither amount, $11,500 or the $30,000, would the majority of those schools be fully covered. Now, more of the schools would be fully covered. It's around 26 schools that would be fully covered, but not the majority.
I think a lot of people might assume that some of that difference might be made up because these private schools, they do offer some financial aid and scholarships, right?
They do, and that's a really important note here. When we were going through all of the tuition costs, every single school had some mechanism for scholarship or financial aid. But what's important is that the legislation doesn't require them to make up the difference. We talked to 2 leaders at private schools that serve students with disabilities, and we asked them kind of the same scenario about how they, the same questions about how they would approach this program. The first person we asked was Laura Steinbach. She's the head of school at Ross and Saunders Institute. It's a school that serves students with a diagnosis of dyslexia. They have extremely small class sizes. We took a tour, and at one point there were several classrooms that just had a teacher and a student, or a teacher and 2 students. There was a math class that had a teacher and 4 kids. And Steinbach says she sees the school as a model for how you can teach students that learn differently. But tuition at that school exceeds $37,000. Let's say 20 families come to you and they can't afford to pay a dime more than what they were given. Mm-hmm. Are you guys in a position where you can kind of make it up with financial aid? What would that look like?
Well, we have a lot of families already on financial aid. So if we have 20 new families coming in that also need financial aid and they need a substantial amount of support, then there are 2 answers. There's the now and there's the later. It means that now we probably couldn't serve all of them. The later means that we'd need to build toward increasing our financial aid account so that we have more money to give.
All right, we are going to hear from another Austin private school when we come back from a quick break. Welcome back to KXAN's Inside the Investigation. I'm Josh Hinkle here with Kelly Wiley this week talking about education savings accounts. So Kelly, we heard something similar from another Austin private school that helps students with speech language learning difficulties.
We are actually a very low tuition rate relatively compared to other programs in the state. We run a pretty tight budget as it is. We're not going to change the way that we admit students and that we allocate scholarship funds based on any kind of ESA voucher. We have to maintain those low ratios, but we also have to be able to pay the teachers to be able to provide that therapeutic learning environment.
So the analysis that you and our digital data reporter, Christopher Adams, actually did goes beyond private schools for students with special needs, right?
It does. I mean, we went into this not really knowing exactly what we were going to see as far as tuition, but what you'll often see is it's broken out by grade level. There's a different price if you're in kindergarten, there's a different price if you're in elementary, middle, high school. And so we've broken it out on our maps by grade level as well. And for that data set, we focused on Central Texas. As you imagine, there are a lot of private schools, so we kind of wanted to narrow the focus. And if you go to kxan.com right now and explore the data, you'll be able to shift through those grade levels for Central Texas and really get a look at how far this ESA would go.
Yeah, and you can explore that on the investigative tab at kxan.com. The bill has passed the House and Senate at this point, the one we've been talking about, and it looks like it's going to go to the governor's desk. Seems like everyone's on board at this point, at least as much as they can be.
Right. And the way the bill is laid out, it could be up and running by the 2026-27 school year. There are still a lot of unanswered questions and things that remain to be seen. One of the spoke to said, right now there are more questions than answers for us, but we'll be following it every step of the way, giving you updates on what's going on and how this will impact education across the board.
And this is such a fluid issue too. Who knows what could happen in this last month of the session. So everyone pay attention to what our investigative team and our political team is doing over on kxan.com.
Right. Be glued to kxan.com right now if you've got a kid or not in the education system. But for those of you listening or watching, we appreciate you. Josh, I appreciate you taking over the host chair today. Don't forget to join us next Friday at 10:30 for Inside the Investigation. And again, you can listen to us on KXAN's investigative podcast. It highlights some of our award-winning team's latest reports exposing corruption, safety concerns, system failures across Texas. The podcast will feature audio versions of our weekly Inside the Investigation discussion with the journalists working on those stories. As always, see you next time.